Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, and perhaps even good evening. A spooky good evening I wish to you all in Europe. Wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much for dropping by, and welcome to the Spooktacular Halloween, kind of pre-Halloween type stream of In the Studio with Daz 3D. It's wonderful to see you all here. We have a really full house, and so many familiar faces are here. This is awesome. I'm actually having some coffee. Totte, what are you having? I hear you're not having rum this evening, which is good. Awesome. Good to see you all. Let me just dive right in and tell you and ask you to please submit your entries to the fantastic Spooktacular render contest that is currently going for another 2 days. So you can submit any spooky image made with and in Daz Studio with Daz assets to the Spooktacular render contest here. You can also make animations, and you can make still images that tell a story featuring Daz characters and anything that is in Daz Studio. You can win absolutely super fantastic, awesome prizes. Those prizes are kind of cool, aren't they? Do you remember the last contest that they had? Unbelievable. So here we have first place iPad Pro 12-inch. That is kind of crazy cool. Second place, $500 in cash. We're not talking store credit, we're talking cash, like in-hand readies type thing. Third place, $200 in store credit. Not shabby. This buys you a lot of stuff. All you need to do is render your favorite Daz spooky scene for another 2 days. I believe the submission deadline is November the 1st, Utah time at midnight, so it's another 2 days. It's very cool. You make your render, you submit it through this entry form below. I'll show you a link in a moment where to get there. And once you've posted that on the Daz gallery, so upload it to the Daz gallery, grab a link to that, grab it and post it in this submission form that you have at the bottom there. That's submitted it to Daz. You also need to then go and post the same picture onto any of your social sites, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything you have, and just add the hashtag made with Daz. And then you have you have a chance to win. Hello from Mexico, Alberto. That's exciting. Wow, Mexico. That's exciting. Buenos dias. Very cool. Here's some images that get you inspired for the contest, and I hope you can snag up some of those prizes here. At the bottom you see that submission form, so name, email, use your Daz email for that, a social link like your Twitter, your Facebook, whatever, and where you've posted that picture, and then add a link to your gallery, so your Daz gallery, and agree to the terms and conditions, submit for a chance to win. It's awesome stuff. So I just thought I'd plug that a couple of times in before we get started here. It will be a fun contest, absolutely, Nate. It's going to be good. Oh, bonsoir to rural France, Jeff. Awesome. Good to see you, my friend. So here we go. There's something, if you have missed any of the previous live streams and you want to catch up, at the top of the Daz page under community, you have this tab, which is in the studio. If you open that up, then this page comes up, and that brings us neatly to what we're going to be doing today, namely this exciting little scene. I'll show you this in more detail in a Photoshop file that I have here. This is the holding page, or this is kind of the collective page that lets you watch other Daz streams. It also has a link to today's bundle that I'm going to be using, which is the Spooky Hollow bundle, and you get 60% off. I'm not going to be using all the items in that bundle, but I'm going to be using some of them, namely that house in the background here, the Orbit Mansion, and the Headless Horseman, and some poses of it. And on top of that, we're going to be making ourselves some flying ghosts here. It's kind of a continuation from the last stream in which I've explained how to make this kind of effect happen with dForce. So we're going to build this character here, and we're going to duplicate it a few times. Then we're going to build a Headless Horseman hero character. We're going to load up the scene here, the background scene, and we'll add the mood, kind of the tone to it, and the characters we're going to make in empty scenes and just bring them in so that we have everything neatly compartmentalized. There's a couple of things here. There's also bats in here. I don't know if we're going to have time for bats. I'll see what we can do. If we don't, then I'll make a separate video about that. I don't want to make it over 2 hours, so the bats are billboards here. There's also a neat fog effect in here. In fact, let me just bring up the Photoshop version of that. I don't have the layers anymore. I think I've deleted that already. But the fog is not part of the actual scene that comes out of Daz Studio. So I've added that in Photoshop. And once again, I can show you how to do that later. I'm doing that because the scene itself has a volumetric fog in there, and it looks amazing, but it also takes quite a lot of render time. So I'll switch that off. So we just get faster preview renders. That's the idea. With all that said, let's go and jump right in. So I'll go and open the Daz Studio. I'll bring in some music for next time, shall I? That'll be just before or after Christmas. I'll play some music in the background. I'll do that for next time. Nice licensed music, like nice piano music in the background. That might be cool. Let's start with, in fact, with Orbit Mansion. Let's start with our, no, actually, let's not. Let's start with a bit of organization that I'd like to do for my Daz projects. I'm going to go and create a brand new folder anywhere you like. I'm going to use mine on my desktop here. New folder. And I'm going to call that Halloween, maybe. That'll be the name of our scene. Doesn't have to be the desktop. You can use a cloud folder. This is especially important if you want to take the scene and render it on a different computer. If you want to take that into the cloud, or if you want to port it to a different computer for rendering, if everything's compartmentalized into one folder, it'll be really easy to port all these assets. So this is going to be our master folder. And in Daz Studio here, on the Content Library tab, I'll just go and add it here on the Daz Studio formats. Right click, add a base directory, pick set folder, namely Halloween, select it, and boom, that's that. So this means now that when we open the Daz Studio formats here, we have our own Halloween folder in here, and any subfolders that I create in here will be there. All the items that I get to save in here, anything that I might create like OBJs, textures, and whatnot, everything can be compartmentalized in that one folder, and you know, that's that. Oh, you know, before I forget, hello Chris, welcome by the way. Dartenbeck can't be here with us today in the live stream, by the way. Dartenbeck, very nice to read your comment there on my personal channel. That was really nice. Dartenbeck has a gig tonight with his band, so he has to do a bit of preparing the drum set, rocking the drum set, and then coming down from the gig and then coming home. And he says he's going to watch the stream after like at 4 in the morning. Welcome Dartenbeck if you're watching. Totally cool. Oh, okay. X201 says, don't worry about going 2 hours. I like it. I like it. Let's see what we can do there. Let's see what we can do there. Maybe I can get it all done. So one folder. And this is where I'm going to save all my scenes. You can make subfolders in that for Daz scenes and stuff. I probably put all my scenes in the top level, and then anything that's a bit exotic, like characters, they'll receive their own folder. So maybe I'll do that now. I'll go create a subfolder, and I'll call this characters. So it's going to be fairly simple in my case because I only have the ghost character and I have the hero character, but sometimes you may have other characters. So there we go. Let's start with the background and just set the mood for the scene, and then we'll worry about the characters. So Orbit Mansion is part of the Spooky Hollow bundle, and you can snag that up for 60% off. This is it here, Orbit Mansion. It says 2 of 2 on the smart content. It's just one folder really, but it comes with environments. You have a day scene here and a night scene, and I'm going to use the night scene, of course. You also have lights. I won't be using them. That's going to be something that's kind of pre-set with a preloaded scene here, but you have them separate if you wanted it. There's also materials for the house and for the grounds. There's several props. You can rebuild your scene from scratch or move things around if you like. And we even have render settings. So I'm just going to use this one here, the preload night scene, and then we'll see where that goes. Biscuits, you know, I think we're all big fans. We're actually very, very happy to have you here. Biscuits has just started her own podcast on YouTube. That's very nice to see that. I haven't had a chance to look into that yet. I understand you do this live as well. That's going to be great. I'm going to look into that. There's 2 episodes up already, and it's an ongoing project. So, you know, support Biscuits. See what she has to say. Oh, yes, please make a tutorial on how to do hair. That's probably one for Biscuits. Biscuits is much better in that than I am. Let me go and switch over to my Scene Navigator tool, because that lets me now go and left click and drag in the scene and just look around. I'm somewhere in the shrubbery here. Let's see if I can get out somehow. There's the house. So this navigation method is really nice because it is just like walking around a scene in a first-person or third-person computer game. I'm going to just go right-click and drag on my loop icon and make that a bit wider and just explore the scene. This is a bit blown out here with filament, so I'll go and come onto my filament draw options nodes under environment, and I'm going to tone that down from 8,000. I think the default is something even higher than that. It's something like 3,000 here, something like that. There, that gives us a bit of a less blown out view of the whole grounds. So I encourage you, when you have a new scene and you haven't quite explored that yet, wander around with WASD, with the WASD keys, and with the scene navigator tool, and just wander around and see what you find, because this is technically what you do if you're a photographer in a real set, and you just pick the correct spot. Look, we've even got ravens here. Look at that. Little ravens. We could use those to make them fly in the air. That is a possibility. I've just used 2D templates for that. Look at that. He's standing on here. Very cool. It's just, you've got to appreciate the artist's work that goes into things. These moire effects here, don't worry about them. That's a filament thing. That might be, it's just, maybe it's a little bit high res, so let's not worry about that. They're not really there in Iray. I'm particularly keen on the path here, so I might just go and position my character somewhere along the path. But for now, I just want to get the framing right. Let's see what we have. Aspect ratio is square right now, so I'll go and turn that into, you can do something totally cinematic. I think I might just go with 16:9, 1280 by 720 for now. We can always change that later. And switch on the aspect frame here. And then we can have a look what my final scene is going to look like. So I'm thinking the hero character stands somewhere on the path. He's coming from the house. It's kind of the story that I've built up in my mind there. He's coming from his house. He has heard a noise and he's thinking, what's going on here? And then in the background, he sees that, there's ghosts trying to get him and all that. And maybe, bats flying around. So, but he doesn't see that. They're kind of trying to get him from the back there. That's the little story here. And he's having a look around on his house and grounds, that sort of thing. So I like the framing in principle. I'm not keen on that tree here. I might also leave out this bit here. We could do that. I like the idea of seeing more of the house. Yeah, I don't think I like the tree here, but we can do that all with perspective. So if you right click and drag on the loop icon, you can really go out with what the perspective has to offer. This would be zooming in, as if you're zooming into something further away with a long lens, or you make this a bit kind of spooky. We don't have numeric value, so sometimes I create myself a walk around camera that lets me create numeric value so that I know exactly with what focal length I'm shooting. I can also remove the tree. We'll see how it looks. I'm thinking maybe something like that might work. If I'm happy with my shot overall, I'm going to go and create a camera out of that. So create new camera, apply the perspective view, and now we have a camera that looks exactly like my perspective view looked. There's cameras in here already. I'm not going to use them, but do explore them if you switch around and just have a look what comes with the set already. There's a lot of nice shots of the house, but we're not going to use those, so I'm going to go and just use my own. And to keep it nice and tidy, I'm just going to go and delete the whole camera group, so none of the cameras are there with me again. So with the camera here selected, let me go on the parameters tab and just have a quick nosy what my current focal length is, just so that I can get a bit of a base thing going here. Focal length is 32. That's kind of good. Let me try 28. Yeah, let me try 28, and then we'll probably see something. Maybe 38 is a better choice. 38. Let's do that. 38, and then we'll see what it looks like with the character in there. So before we worry about the characters, I'd like to set the kind of the mood for the scene. So it's one of those things that I like doing while I work, so that I have a bit of an understanding what the scene is going to look like. Oh yes, first of all, we're going to save this. That's important. So in my newly created folder, I'm just going to go click this plus button and say I'll save the whole scene, and that is going to be, I'll just call it Master V1. You can call it anything you like. Just make it nice and quick and snappy so that you remember what it is if you save multiple versions. You can use version control to do this as well. Coders like doing that. Just put everything in version control. Just hit Control S and do the commit on another interface. I might do a video on that. That's actually a really good idea. Putting this kind of folder under version control in 3D work, like Unreal Engine does, that is a great idea. Let me switch over to my Iray viewport and we'll see what this scene looks like just as it is. Right, yes. Good idea, Donald. I do that as well. It's, you know, it's one of those things I really like doing that. I'm using the default HDRI here, and you can see that there is a bit of a fog effect in here already, but it looks too light, in my opinion. It should be like a spooky dark night scene. So let's go under render settings, environment, and just make the environment intensity, which is currently 2.0. Let's make that, well, about 0.5. Let's see that. That's kind of, you know, that's getting there. It's getting dark-ish. Let me show you a little bit more of the scene there. So 0.5, maybe 0.3. That's even better. So we're going to brighten the background up later with 2 spotlights. So we're kind of, that's, maybe, tell you what, let's make it 0.5 because we're going to make it dark with another little thing here. Let me take the fog effect out and show you where that is. So this is in the Orbit Mansion nighttime scene. You have the nighttime fog here, and this is a shader you might want to have a look at. It's a volumetric fog shader, and I haven't quite explored it fully yet, but it looks amazing. So you can probably use it in your own scenes as well. Whenever you need fog directly in Daz Studio, save that out and use that. Don't redistribute it, of course, but you know, it's what you can do. So if I go and just make that invisible, you can see what happens to my scene. It now loses not only the background, but it also loses some of the fog effect. And that's okay with me because anything that's gray here right now, that'll be rendered transparently, and I'll go and replace that in Photoshop. But it'll speed up render, so I'm going to just go switch that off for now. You don't have to delete it. I'll just go switch it off. Speaking of which, I did like the dark blue background, so I will use something similar and just add an environment background in there. So instead of rendering with transparency, during the building of my scene, I'm going to go onto the environment tab here, and at the top here, I'm going to switch this from none to backdrop, and then I'll pick myself a color. So currently it's white. That's a bit like, ooh, okay, what's going on? But if we go and pick something like a darkish blue, then that'll emulate pretty much what the fog just did, but at a fraction of the time. Maybe this is a bit too saturated, but you know, we're kind of getting there. Less saturation, more darkness. Yeah, there we go. That's a nice night sky. So I'll do that just so that I'm going to use this as a preview. So when I render this properly, I'll take the backdrop off again and replace that in Photoshop, maybe with a gradient, maybe with something else. But for now, this is going to be just fine. I'm going to do something else. I'll go and make this a bit bigger here. I'm going to use a bit of tone mapping in this. And tone mapping, you find that under the render settings. You can also use a tone mapper node in the scene tab and then just use the parameters tab. But if you do the render settings and then with tone mapping, you can do all kinds of other exciting things in here. So one of them is a little bit of vignetting. So again, this is an effect that I would normally apply in Photoshop, and I might still do that, but for preview purposes, to just get a little bit of the mood of the picture right, I'm going to go and turn that up to, I'll try 10. That might be a bit much, but there we go. You can see what that does. It adds this nice little vignette around it, and also it makes the image a little bit darker, at least on the outsides. It'll leave the bright spot on the middle there, and this is kind of where our character is. 10 might even be a bit too much. Maybe we'll try 5. That still takes a little bit off the edges, but it adds that extra bit of spookiness to it. So I like doing that. That's neat. So maybe we'll stay with 5. Should we stay with 10? I can't tell yet. But that's like really cool. Maybe something in the middle. I might just use 5 for now. 6, 7, 8, 7.5. 5's okay. We'll use 5. Something else that you can play around with at your own leisure is these things here, crush blacks and the gamma. So crush blacks, anything that's set to default means the picture comes out like this. But if you crank this up, then anything on the bottom part of the gamma curve will be slightly, this is kind of an added contrast that's there. So rather than the curve going like that, it'll have a knee at the bottom. And the more you add that into the effect, the more you have that. Well, that's too much. So experiment with it and play around and see what happens. I think I've ruined it now. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Just a little bit, like 0.3 or something. Oh, look at that. What's happened? That didn't happen in rehearsal, did it? Play around with that. These are things you can think of tone mapping as developing a digital negative image that comes from an SLR. If you're familiar with that terminology, if you go and take a picture in the RAW format, that's not really something you can look at on the computer. If you take it in JPEG, you can look at it, but the raw image is essentially the data that comes out of the processor of the CMOS sensor, of the thing that takes the picture. And it's a little bit like that with render engines as well. There's the thing that makes the data available, but then there's a certain amount of post-processing that needs to happen for us to actually be able to turn that data from the image sensor or from the render engine into a viewable picture. And that's what tone mapping does. So tone mapping is responsible for contrast and saturation and all that. So there's things like saturation here. You can turn that down a bit. 1 means fully saturated. 0 means there's no saturation in this at all. And then we have a black and white image. So if you want to create that, you can do that directly in Daz Studio. It's kind of cool. So you can, like for our scene, it might be nice if we desaturate this a little bit. And again, those are things I would probably do in Photoshop. I don't really know why it just goes completely black. That usually doesn't happen. So I might have to forgo this and just put it into the default position because that's the only one that works. But usually this works. So yeah, you can play around with that. Maybe it's float values that it has a problem with. Yeah, it could be. So 0.5 actually works. Let's see if 0.2 works. And you can see this, like there's still blue in the background, but there's not a lot of blue in there. Maybe it is float values that it has a problem with. So same with the crushed blacks. Maybe I'll try 0.5. Does that work? Yeah, there we go. Now I can show you what it does. Maybe it's float values that it has an issue with. So this just adds all that extra spookiness to that, and you don't have to leave Daz Studio to do that. So it's kind of nice. I might put my saturation to 0.7 so that we make it a little desaturated, and the crushed blacks I might leave that on 0.6, and then we'll go and save the scene and get on with it. One other thing, somebody's just mentioned this, lock your cameras. That is a very good idea, so that in case in the heat of the moment I do stuff that isn't supposed to happen. I think I can just go lock selected properties. And with that, no, it didn't do that. Why not? Transforms. Lock. So, I need to select them, don't I? Should I select all of them? Those things. Lock selected properties. And now a little lock icon should come up here. It kind of doesn't really do that. The idea is that now I shouldn't really be able to move my camera anymore. Again, this did work at one point. I can't really tell you why it doesn't work anymore. Maybe I have to select them like this. Is that what we need to do? Lock selected properties. Are you doing it? Yes, there we go. It doesn't really do multi-selections very well. I don't know why. It's one of those things. I like leaving mistakes like this in, because in rehearsal these things always work perfectly fine, David, that's very nice of you. Pamela, I thought that was a thing that lets you do this like all in one go. Didn't I make a video about this recently in which it worked? There we go. Now, in case, so this happens to me all the time. If I don't lock my camera and I'm not on the perspective view, perspective view is for me there so that I can walk around and test something else and go to a different object and work on that. Oftentimes I'm on the camera, and then I go and alt click and drag, and then all of a sudden my camera perspective shifts, and with the locked camera that can't happen. So that's why I'm doing that. Let me go back to filament, save my scene. I might just add a little bit extra light to my filament viewport just so that I can see my people there. Now I'm going to go and save the scene. Just oversave what I had. And before I get on with the characters, I'd like to do something else that has to do with making my previews a little bit faster. I like using the Scene Optimizer product by V3 Digitimes. And that is a tool that lets you reduce the texture maps on objects. So while this Orbit Mansion is absolutely spectacularly beautiful, it is extremely high res, and there's a lot of detail in this that for my scene later I'm not going to actually need. So all this detail here on the ivy and on the bricks and stuff, I'm not going to need that, because for me, it's going to be an object with depth of field applied just in the background. And as such, I don't need to burden the render engine with all that detail that I'd have to pull in for every preview render. So that's not really necessary. So what I like doing is run the scene optimizer. So I'll just go quickly do that. I've just edited a video about this, and it'll come out soon. That has a lot more information on it. It's on the Utilities tab. I'll just quickly run you through it. It'll be there's 4 icons here, and the first one will write a text file with all the current maps in the scene. So I'm just going to go and run that and put that on in my Halloween folder. I'm going to make a subfolder in this folder, and I'm going to call it Scene Optimizer. And that's where I will save my file, and I'll call that Halloween Mansion. And that's just going to pull out a text file. You can lock them all in one go, right? X201? I thought so too. Let's figure out how later. So that's done. Now we're going to go and use the second icon here, and that will now offer us to reduce all the maps in the scene. And that'll just make for faster preview renders as we go along. It takes a second. Thank you for that link, Brian. Brian is one of my moderators. Brian, Nate, and Julia. Brian, aka Zero Kelvin. Julia is still Julia V1 in the chat, and Nate is Drago Nate. He's looking after Twitch today. Thank you for all your hard work, guys. This folder here is important. I like to set that and browse to a new folder, which is also on my desktop in the Halloween folder, in the Scene Optimizer folder. I've misspelled it. One of those things. In it, I'm going to make a new folder, and that's going to be called Maps. That's just me being particular, because anything that will end up here, that's where the reduced maps are. So if I wanted to take this into the cloud or onto a different computer for rendering, I like having it all in one place. This list on the bottom tells me all the maps that will be reduced as this part. So we have the mansion, we have the ground. Mansion and ground are 4K maps, the rest of them are 2K maps. And I might just go and reduce them quite severely by a factor of 4. So that means a 4K map will be reduced to a 1K map. A 2K map will be reduced to a 512 map. That does sound a bit harsh, doesn't it? Maybe 2. 2 is fine. 2 is fine. Let's go run it. And we're hopefully not going to run into any issues. And you can see that Scene Optimizer now takes every map, reduces it, and applies the reduced map. And then we're going to have faster previews. If we needed to restore any of the original high-res maps, you can do that. That's what the other 2 scripts are for. It'll take a moment, but it'll make your rendering and preview life while you build a scene so much easier. Oh, that is nice. Good to hear. Yeah, Chris, I thought I tried that. No, I tried the right-clicking. Good point. Thank you, Chris. Let's try that. Let's try that just now. I like unearthing these types of puzzles, you know. So just to reiterate, if you use a factor of 2, then that means the reduction in your maps is actually by 4. So 4K map will become a 2K map, but it means that it is actually reducing the size of the map by more than 50%. In fact, 50%, that would be like a 3K map. But from going to 4K to 2K, that is actually more like 75% or like a 70% reduction. So be aware of that. One of those things. Camera optimizer. Oh, I'm not familiar with that, Donald. How interesting. That's it. We can just go leave it and close out the script. If we wanted to restore anything, we can just use either of these tools and the text file we've made initially, and then just click an object or click a surface, call any of these scripts, and that'll reduce the that'll restore the high-ray maps on our object. Let's go solve that camera puzzle here then. So currently, let's go with the translate values. They're all locked right now. I've tried right-clicking on this. Chris says use the hamburger icon on the right and try that. Lock selected and unlock selected nodes. Let's try that. Unlock. It has done it. It has done it. These are now unlocked. Rotation is still... It's also unlocked. Oh, how interesting. Why? I didn't use rotation. Interesting, but right-clicking doesn't work, does it? So if I go and right-click this, which is technically the same menu, if I say lock selected properties, no, that doesn't work, but the hamburger menu, apparently, lock selected nodes. Oh, a little bug in Daz Studio. Mr. Chris knew the answer. Look at that. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I knew it worked at one point. So it's just that the right-click context menu on these things doesn't work, but the hamburger icon works. Ah, interesting. Pamela, we've just solved the problem. So we can lock them all at once. All we need to do is use the hamburger icon. Pamela, welcome back. So unlock selected nodes will in fact unlock all of these. In fact, all of those, I mean, including scale and translation. But it doesn't work on the right click. So ha ha ha. Good to know, good to know. I'll let the developers know. Lock selected nodes, then that means our camera is locked off in rotation and translation. Okay, good. We're done with this. I'm going to go save my, oh darn, I should have saved it as a new scene. That was actually my plan. I was going to save it as master 2, but I guess I didn't get there. Sorry. So we have our scene saved. That's all that counts. Let me go make a new scene, brand new scene, and we'll work on our ghost now. I'll go and put my render settings back to something like a square, just so that we can see the little guy that we're going to be building. So this is the ghost character here. These things, they are also used, or something similar like this is used in the promo page of the render contest, I believe. If I still have it here. Yep, there it is. If you go further to the bottom and look a bit on the background images, look at that. All these flying ghosts here, that is all done with a similar effect. And you can use as much high resolution as you like. You can put any type of object underneath it and then just use a simple plane, drape that over an object, and then it'll just go, you know, fall over. So I'll show you how to make that happen, and an easy way that you can use this object and not deal with dForce once it's ready. And then as a finishing touch, we're going to go and add some cartoon eyes here on top of the ghost to make him look like, you know, he's a little cute little guy who's looking around. So, ghost. I'm going to use a sphere as the head part of the ghost. So let's create a new primitive. That's going to be our guy's head. You can use anything you like. You can use a whole person. We're not going to be, it's not going to be part of the scene. I don't even know how tall this guy is going to be. That's essentially his head. Now we'll go and create a plane. Plane primitive. I think I worked out that something around like 3 meters is going to be nice, so that there's enough drape, but it's not going to be all that long. So 3 to 4 meters. 1 to 2 is a bit short, but 3 to 4 meters is going to work fine. And then the most important thing is that we need to give Daz Studio enough geometry to work with. So 100 divisions will work fine. The default is 1, and that's just one large polygon. So if you try to dForce that, it's not going to bend, because there's nothing in which there aren't any segments in there that could bend and fold. So I'm going to use 100. You can use a few more. I wouldn't use any less. We can also add a subdivision surface modifier next to make it even smoother, but this is going to be fine. That's going to be the poor guy's body. So we'll go and bring him up somewhere above the sphere, like so. And the magic now is that we'll apply well, we're going to call this guy Ghost first of all, and this is going to be the ghost's head here instead of sphere. So the ghost, the trick here is that on the simulation settings tab, if you don't have it docked somewhere sensibly, you can go and use this a hamburger icon menu again and add a dForce dynamic surface modifier, just like I've explained in the previous live stream. So we add that, and this is now a dForce property set on our cloth. And in here, I'm going to do a few other adjustments. I could just go and hit simulate, but that's not going to simulate the whole cloth to the very bottom. That's only going to do something over 30 frames, which is probably not going to be enough for what we need. So yeah, look at that. It's not quite finished to be a ghost. It's kind of on the way to be a ghost, but it's not quite there yet. I might also go and dim down the filament viewport a little bit. There, so just we can see it a little bit better. So instead then, on simulation settings, on the duration tab here, I'm going to go and switch this over to my either to custom or to my play range timeline. I might just use the timeline, and then down here I'll go and set the total play duration to 121 frames. That's 120 frames, 4 seconds, and 1 frame because it's the 0th frame. And I'll go and hit simulate again. And now we'll get a longer simulation. And that means we can go and pick whichever position we fancy best for our ghost. Because as it kind of settles down there, we'll see more or less of a fold. There, that's that. That's our ghost almost done. So I'll pick something along the lines of here, but to make it a bit more realistic, this is now, it kind of looks the same from all sides. So what I'd like to do is make the ghost appear to be flying through the air. And as he would do that, there'll be a bit of wind draft that goes and pushes against him. So the whole cloth would kind of fall to the back a little bit, as if when he's moving, wind blows against him, and that just makes for a bit of a more realistic ghost, I'm thinking. So let's see where we can, like, if you look at this little thing here and look at the front of the ghost, this is where I'd like my eyes to be. I'm going to put a wind node on here, so that'll go in from here. This is the front here. So in order to make that happen, I'll go and create one. I think I spoke about that in the previous stream as well. Create new dForce wind node, and we'll apply the default settings. That just comes up as an empty node, and we'll go and move that out a little bit to kind of here. And we can see that it's we can see that it's a little bit small and that the fall off isn't quite long enough for the size of our object. So on the parameters tab under wind, with the dForce wind node selected, let's make the diameter a little bit larger to something like that. That'll blow against the whole guy, maybe a little bit more, kind of 120. That'll do the trick. And this first circle here, this is the beginning. This is where the fall off starts, and then this is where the fall off ends, and then after that there's no more wind effect. I'm going to go and make the fall off a little bit larger so that it all blows against this guy, that there's no cutoff here. Then we're just going to go and make fall off length, fall off start a little bit longer, so that this first circle here moves beyond my ghost. There. And then all I maybe need is to move this guy up a little bit. We'll see what that does. Just out of curiosity. And if it doesn't work well, I'm thinking I might just go and angle the wind node up a little bit so that that is just, I kind of like that. There's also the wind strength that we're not entirely sure about. And I can see it wafting a little bit. It's a tiny disturbance there. Getting in the right direction. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to go and make it a bit stronger. So that's just the wind node on the strength here. Let's try 10. That's twice as much. And I might also go and angle this guy up a bit. Like so. That might just be a little bit more realistic. Perhaps. It's all a bit trial and error, that. That would be cool, wouldn't it? And then instead of 3 or 4 lines, we just have a little hamburger there. It's getting there, it's getting there. I think I might move it down a little bit. This might be a little too wafty, but it's absolutely... Oh, look at that. I've accidentally positioned it wrongly. Look at that. It's a keyframe thing here. This keyframe should be the one that is at the beginning of that. Let's see if it lets me paste it. This happens sometimes. There we go. So now we don't move things down anymore. And then this we can probably delete. If it lets me delete select keys, yes, perfect. I didn't mean for that to for that to happen. For that or for this. I'm just deleting this this keyframe at the back here. I'm meant for this to not have any keyframes. I'm meant for this to be a global thing. So up a little and then down. Happens all the time, this. Happens all the time. And also maybe the wind strength was a little bit much, so maybe I'll give it 8. But you get the principle. Play around with it as much as you like. I think I might settle for whatever comes out next because we have other stuff to do. In the original demo image that I've made, I didn't use a square piece of cloth, I used a round one. But it turned out that was more difficult to create than I thought. So Blender didn't like remeshing it and bringing it into Daz Studio. It's just, none of that really worked. It's a little off center here. I might just go and try the same thing again and just move this guy slightly further over to the right and try this again. Yeah, so in the end I ended up in Marvelous Designer, making a piece of cloth in Marvelous Designer, and I thought, you know, that adds a whole different level of complexity. I'm not going to do that. So hopefully this is going to be our ghost. He's kind of nice. It's still hitting it on the side there a little bit. Let me go and try this one more time, moving this over here. A lot of trial and error. We'll see. We'll work it out. Swords for 2. Top of the evening, buddy. While dForce simulates, I'll pour myself another cup of coffee. Okay, look, that is pretty much in the center. I think we're settling on this. That is a beautiful ghost. That is very pretty from all sides, if I may say so myself. That is very, very good. Cute little ghost. What do you say? Is that nice? That's a nice ghost. And he wafts around. That's very nice. You can even animate him by just doing this. And we're not going to do that. I'm just going to use the last frame. I think that looked very nice. Yeah, this is nice. But pick any frame you like with the timeline and pick the one that you fancy. And now we're going to go, first of all, save this as a scene under characters here, just so that I have this whole thing with dForce. I'll save it as Ghost dForce, just so that I have it as a separate scene in there somewhere, but I'm not going to use this to import into my master scene. There's a lot of other things that I want to do to my little ghost here. So the first one is that I will export this little guy out as an OBJ, and that means I can go and bring it in again. I'm going to go make all these other parts here invisible. You don't really have to do that. You can just go and select the ghost and then export him as an OBJ. I'll go and do that. And this now goes into my Halloween stream, and I'm going to make another folder in here that I'll call OBJs. I do that because it's just a habit I get into, that whenever I have any intermediate objects that I like to save out, I like to do that. I'll call this guy Ghost, save him out, and we can just use the Daz Studio defaults here and then go and accept. That's that. Since I have saved my scene, I can now go and get rid of essentially everything. Almost everything. And import, was that the wind node? I'm so sorry, that's not what I meant. You could just use a new scene, essentially. Put my playhead back on the first frame and be done with the timeline. And import the OBJ again. And I'm doing that so that the ghost itself is now one single object that I can save as a subscene and do other things with. There, that's him. Notice that now that he's exported, there's nothing on the timeline anymore. If I needed to do any animation bits and pieces, I don't have to worry about freezing the animation. There's no dForce on this thing anymore. It's just a static object now. So again, it makes my life a lot easier on this. Let's see what he looks like in Iray, and then we'll add some eyes on it and tweak his material so that he's a little bit translucent and emits a little bit of light. So it's a little bit like on our previous scene. I'm using the default environment intensity. I might just turn that down to 0.3 just so that it's a bit darker. So you can see he's a little bit jagged. And if you want to do something about that, just apply a subdivision surface modifier. That'll get rid of all these jaggies here. I might do that under Edit Object Geometry, Convert to Sub D. When you do that, you must select an item, of course. Duh. Select the item first, then go under Edit Object Geometry and convert it to sub D. And that essentially applies that subdivision surface modifier. Now, all the folds are really just, jitter-free and jaggy-free. And it also gives you now the option under parameters, under mesh resolution, to switch from high resolution to base resolution. So now we have the option on him. I'll leave base on for now, and we'll see if it's necessary to use it. Let's tweak the material in a little bit after we've made the eyes. Let's make the eyes first. So the eyes, I'm not going to have a texture on this guy. I'm just going to have a white material that came with him, or this gray material, and I'll tweak the cutout opacity on the surfaces tab a little bit. So on the geometry cutout opacity, I'm going to make that a little bit just dimmed down, like 0.8 or something. That makes him a little bit transparent, and that just gives him that ghostly appearance. I'll also add a little bit of emission there, but mostly I'm going to add eyes to him, and I'm not going to do that with the texture. I'm going to do this with an Iray decal node, and that is something quite fancy actually. It's a projection that game engines often use. If you shoot at something like a wall and you see bullet points impacting that wall, then the geometry of that wall or the texture of that wall isn't actually changed, but a decal is projected onto it temporarily. Footsteps is another good way of that. If you're walking in the desert, there's no real geometry that gets deformed usually. There's just a bunch of footprints that are being drawn onto the ground. And then when you look back, then you see that over the course of 10 seconds or so, they kind of fade out again as if there were never any footprints. And this is classic use of decals. And Iray has this principle as well. So all we need for that is an image that we can project on it. Let me go and grab one and make one myself. Or in fact, grab one. You can search for cartoon eyes and get an image. You can draw them yourself. I'm going to use Canva quickly and just make an Instagram post. Not really, but they have nice cartoony little elements. I don't know if you're familiar with Canva. It's a project by Guy Kawasaki. And look at that. They have, if you look for something like eyes, then you'll find a lot of eyes. And we can pick any of these we want. Animations, of course, won't work. We need a kind of a static image. Google image search will do the same trick. He has a little mouth as well. We can use this. We can use the one with the pink eyes here. That might be an idea. Or these. And there's a ton of eyes. There's the ones with the eyeballs. That might be interesting. I don't know. There's these ones. That might be a little creepy. Anything we like. Oh, this here, sleepy ghost. This, that maybe. How about these? That's a good idea. Let's use that. Let's do that. Let's go and put these guys in. These are going to be our eyes. I'm going to hold Alt, Shift, click to make them a bit bigger. The size of this isn't really that important. So you can probably get away with 256 by 256. This is all I need right now. I'll go and download this with transparent background and carry on working in Photoshop with that. There, the eyes. I'll leave that open and go and open. That was in my downloads, wasn't it? Any old eye texture will do. This is actually really nice. So the most important thing is that you have a transparent background. The way Iray applies transparency is that it ignores the transparency that's inside a PNG, for example, and it needs a dedicated map for that. So I guess it would prefer JPEG images. So let me make two parts of this. Let me go and add a white background to this, first of all, and move the background underneath it. And then I'll put this into its own group, just so that we're getting organized here. And that is my that is the first part of the puzzle. So this is basically the base map that I'll use for my eyes. Let me go and save that out. Once again, into my Halloween folder, I'm going to go and make a new folder in this, and I'm going to call that textures. And as your projects grow, it's really helpful to have this kind of folder structure there. I'll call it eyes base, and I'm just going to export this as a JPEG. Eyes base. So now I'll go and duplicate my folder here and make the transparency map from this. And the transparency map means it needs to have whatever the picture is white, and whatever is supposed to be transparent needs to be black. So let's make a black background then instead. And this is probably going to work already. No, it's not going to work. Let me go add some blending options and just have a color overlay over the eyes and make that white. That's as simple as that. So this was the original white background with material, and now the transparency map is the other way around. It's going to be black is transparent and white is whatever material should shine through. And I'll go and save that out as eyes trans. That's that. And this is then eyes trans. While we're keeping everything organized, let me go and save this Photoshop document as well in my folder here. I might go and just add a new one. I could either go into textures. I could make another one and call it PSD files or whatever. But you know, I'll just keep it in the textures folder. All right, let's put eyes on the little guy. Two parts of the process. First, we need to create an Iray decal node for that. That's at the top here. Create Iray decal node. And depends if you've got an object selected already, it offers to parent this to the object, which is a good idea. If you don't have an object selected, this option is grayed out, but I want my decal to move with my ghost. That's kind of important. And as soon as it's here, it has a couple of properties there. So first of all, I'm going to move it slightly. This is just a node here for the decal. I'll go and move this slightly away, and then also move it up, because this is where we'd like the eyes to project. This may or may not work, and it's only visible in Iray. We'll see what happens. So with the decal node selected, I need to set up my material. So that's on the Surfaces tab. We have the same properties as we have on regular surfaces, but we only have a front and a back, or a front and a reverse. I'm hoping front is going to be enough. Under base, let me go in the base channel. Let me go and apply my eyes here. Whoops. Desktop, Halloween, eyes. There we go. Cartoony, hilarious eyes. And then also on the front, under geometry, I'll apply a cutout on the cutout opacity slider. And that's this one here, eyes trans. And if everything worked well, that should now project some eyes on the guy, but we're not seeing anything because it's only visible in, yes, and save. Good idea. Thank you, Nate. That's only going to be visible in Iray. There we go. What do you say? Eyes on the ghost. That was a lucky coincidence, that. Let me go save this. Thank you, Nate, for that. I'm going to go and put this in my characters folder, and I will actually save this as a scene subset, because I don't need all the bits and pieces that come with the little ghost. I'll just call this ghost version 1. Subset means I can deselect things I don't necessarily need to have in there, like the filament draw options, tone mapper options, and all that. All I want is my ghost and the Iray decal node. So I'll just save that so that it's a set, and then it also means it's a character that I can drag into my scene. The little guy is not quite finished yet. So first of all, I think the eye placement could do with a bit of, you know, I might as well also, I'll rename this into eyes here, eyes decal. I think they're a little bit big, so let me make that a bit smaller. And that's just done by shrinking down the decal and moving this guy, moving these up slightly further over here, maybe just a little bit smaller. They're also, I can see that they're not, some of the eyes are cut off, and that is because the projection works that it has kind of, it's projecting a plane, it's kind of a cube, so it has a little bit of a give there where it needs to be in order for the full object to be visible. So let me see if I can move this back a little bit. That makes less of the eyes visible. So let me go and push it in a bit, push the decal closer to the object. And we're almost there. There, I think now we're seeing pretty much all of it. I can also try and make it a bit deeper. That may help. I think it's still a bit too big, even though it does look quite nice, doesn't it, with the big cartoony eyes. I mean, you can stretch it so it just behaves like an object. If you want the eyes to be a bit wider, you can make that happen. Or you can push them closer together if you want it to be a bit mean looking. It's all kinds of things you might want to do. So I think maybe just make them a little bit wider, like so. There, eyes on a ghost. And the cool thing is now that the decal is on the ghost, you can go and take the whole ghost and move him around, and the decal is going to stay in place. So the eyes, no matter if you turn him around or if you rotate him, the eyes are always going to look towards the front. So it's like your own special ghost character here. I think there's only one other thing I might want to do. I was going to put the pivot point a little bit further up, but I think we're okay here. Let's try tweaking the material on him and make him a little bit translucent. And this is now not a decal thing. I might also go and switch him into high resolution. I think that might just that might work best here. There we go. Let's go and tweak the ghost's materials on the surfaces tab under general. It is a cute ghost, isn't it? Indeed, Pamela, good point. Exactly. The perfect example is if you have a plain shirt and you want something like a logo onto the same shirt, and you don't want to go and redo the textures. You don't have to touch anything like Photoshop or whatever. You can just find yourself a graphic that you want to add to the shirt and then just put it anywhere on there, like a fashion label or something like a cute slogan or whatever. That's a great use of a decal. Absolutely. So ghost under geometry, let's reduce your cutout opacity by something like maybe 0.7 to 0.7, something like that. So that makes him a little bit see-through. And we'll see this better in the actual scene, but he doesn't look quite as, white and plasticky anymore. This is with regular opacity, with regular cutout opacity, and this is with him blending in a little bit more. So you can make him as translucent as you want. The more you do that, the more he fades. Kind of like the idea that we don't put this on the eyes. So make it whatever is good for you. See, maybe 0.6. I'll try 0.6, but so that he is also appearing as if he's more ghostly, I'll add some emission here to it. So once again, ghost, surfaces tab, emission channel, change that from black here to any kind of color you want. White will enable it. Anything other than black will enable it. And the default might not be bright enough. But if you want to increase that, like make that 5 times brighter, then you have this ghost that is emitting a little bit of light. Maybe not too much. 5,000 should do if you're staying in candles per square meter. You can also change this to something else that you're more familiar with, like watts, for example. And then just leave luminance as it is and tweak watts. I might try that. And we'll see what that looks like in our master scene. So that's our ghost. That's our ghost. Let's build the hero character next. Can decals have emissive surfaces? I would imagine. Let's try it out. What happens? Good question, Rafida. Let's see what we can do. Front emission. I mean, the channel is there. If I just crank it up quite high just so that we can see something. anything happening. It may not work. Nope, looks like that doesn't work. Good thing to try though. And also good thing to ask these types of questions. And then the next thing I can suggest, try it out and see if it works. You found something new. This is something I didn't know either, but now we know Iray decals cannot have emissive surfaces. So I suppose the shader is there, the channel is there, but it's not really letting us do anything. I'll switch this back to black, and then all these options go away. Good question. Let's go back to filament and save out my ghosts. So this, once again, this is going to be my ghost V2. I'll save him as a scene subset. And I'll switch off everything. I just have the ghost here. And this is now the object that I can drag into my master scene, literally as if it was a brand new character. Anything that I've made for him, with him, about him will be attached and be still working. It's kind of a nice way to break your scene up into little blocks. All right, let's get rid of him and let's start building our hero character next. So this guy is going to be the Headless Horseman. So that's under figures, perhaps. There we go. Headless Horseman HD for Genesis HD, for Genesis 8 male HD. Beautiful guy, beautiful little guy. He looks a bit like the alien, I must say. There's really cool things in this in the Spooky Hollow bundle. I highly recommend you look into it. All these items are also available in separately if you want, but hello, filament draw options node. I'm just going to make this a little bit brighter so that I can see what I'm doing here without, oh yeah, that was probably because I had dimmed down the environment there. So this looks a bit like the alien guy here, doesn't it? Headless Horseman. I'm going to give him a coat as well, but the coolest thing about the guy is that this guy, I think under materials, under autonomy, anatomy, this is where the pumpkin head comes in. So you've seen this in one of the promo images here, I believe, and somebody put this guy in the, where was it? Put this guy in the garage, I think. Yes, here, where the little girl stands here on the right and this head is in the garage. That's just so cool. So you can use it for something like that as well. It has emissive materials on the inside, and it's just, you know, you can use it as a standalone prop as well. Comes up under anatomy. Quite nice. Ascania, how's it going? So with him selected, I'll put that guy on, I believe. There it is. And I might move the position up a little bit. So the pumpkin is now basically replacing the head, but I like the idea of it kind of hovering above his head. Something like that. Very nice. Let's give him something to wear as well. And that's not from the Headless Horseman bundle. That is from, under wardrobe, that is the Plague Doctor. dForce Plague Doctor. I'm not going to load all, so there is a thing that says all, but that also gives you the raven mask and the gloves, and I don't think I want him to wear gloves. He has very sharp nails. It would just poke right through, so I'll just use the overcoat separately. Oops. I've just applied that to the pumpkin head. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Overcoat. It does happen, doesn't it? Let's go and fit the overcoat to the Headless Horseman and parent it to that. See if that works. Does it? Overcoat is parented to here. Yeah, perfect. It is a dForce item, so we can play with that. The overcoat also has a hood here. And we don't really, that's not going to fit into, that's just not going to go well together with the pumpkin head. So on the overcoat, this is how I do it, on the parameters tab, have a look under actor and then see what bits and pieces you have here. So I've got adjustment, for example, movement and overcoat. So those are all potential places in which you can have a look at what morphs might be available with a clothing item. So you can have adjustment morphs like, you know, shoulders wider or something like hips wider or slimmer, so that you can make things, just adjust things, just the fit, even after you've run dForce. That's kind of nice. In my case, all I need is the hood down morph, and that'll do this. So that'll just put the hood down, and that's kind of nice. So this is probably how he would wear his overcoat. Hood is down, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. There. He would wear it like that. Then also the Headless Horseman, he probably also with the Plague Doctor outfit comes with a couple of props, namely a lantern that he holds. I kind of like that. He holds a lantern. Lantern also glows a little bit, and he also has some kind of a staff, and the staff has a rigged kind of ball here on the front. So let's see how we can pose him like that. It comes with poses as well, which is nice. So it gives you a little head start there on how you'd like your character to explore the neighborhood. Whoops. Hey, that's no good. The pumpkin, I might just go and parent that properly. Let me go actually get rid of the pumpkin. There was a wearable, wasn't it? Let me go back to the figure. I think it should have popped into place properly here. Pumpkin prop or the wearable. I probably should have used the wearable. Is that right? There we go. So the difference was the prop just parented itself, whereas the wearable is a smart prop, and that parents itself into the correct spot. So even if I wanted to move it now, I can just move it up, but you can see that it's in the scene hierarchy parented to the head. So wherever the head moves, this thing would move as well. So the benefit of that is if you have the Plague Doctor poses and you strike a pose in which he moves his head, the pumpkin will move. So that's the reason for that, and that's why that is important. Oh, you could run away from the ghosts. You can see how you can build a really creative story with that. Oh yes, good point, Julia. There's a horror freebie that Daz are offering. If you haven't already, it's like an undead zombie type guy. It's totally free, so you have to put in a discount code. I'm thinking just the first pose here, the first or the second one, and then we'll just move his staff away. Like this is nice. If I'm just looking at the lantern here, he's kind of holding it and looking where's this fiend just come from. He can also go and turn his head, like, you know, huh? What's going on? And then I think the arm, I might just use a bit of power pose magic to pose that with the whole arm group. Oop, that's not correct. Always takes a little bit of getting used to. This is the whole arm group here at this point. These are the individual joints here, and this here on the outside of the body, that's the whole group. And if you left click and drag that up and down or left and right, it will actually move the arm or all the joints in that figure. So it's very, very helpful posing aid. You can still go ahead and do this manually. So if you needed to make a manual adjustment, let's have a look if its hands are correct here. This is why I like doing this in a separate scene. So if I were to do this in situ, there's a lot of overhead that goes into moving the background geometry, and we don't really need that until we're absolutely happy with the fingers here. So I can see that this finger is kind of going through the lantern a little bit. So that is his left hand. Let me see. That's also a power pose thing. Left hand, that's this here, and that's what's the finger? The ring finger, isn't it? So that can be adjusted like that. Or like that. So that's the whole finger group. Or this here is the finger joint. So he might just try and hold it like that, maybe. I don't know how you eat breakfast with nails like that. But yeah, I think this is probably how he'd do it. Maybe the thumb also out a little bit. Yeah, that'll work. How's the staff? Oops. Control F will zoom you in on whatever you've got selected. So that's kind of nice if you're either far away from something and you think, I want to do something with this hand. If you hold Control Alt and try to rotate around it, you think, hey, that's not in the center. That totally sucks, man. What's going on? You just select whatever you want to focus on, hit Control F, and that'll zoom it right into the middle of the viewport. And if it's too close, you can always zoom out, and then it'll rotate around this one piece. So it's a very, very helpful thing to do. Let's go and have a look at the thumb placement here. I think that the thumb intersects a little bit with the staff. So I'll move that up a tad. Maybe that's too much. Like, that's going to be, I can live with that. His thumb's probably a bit squishy, so we could probably get away with this. Not that anyone's really going to, whoops, hello, that's on the inside of the staff. Interesting. Not that anyone's really going to see that, but hey, there. We're good. We're good, we're good. Let's see what this guy, oh, he doesn't have boots. Poor little guy, he needs shoes, doesn't he? Totally forgot his boots. He can't go out without boots. He also has, in fact, pants. Let's give him some pants. There we go. Pantaloons, in fact. That looks good. Before we run dForce, let's have a look what this looks like in Iray, and then also worry about this. I think I'm kind of happy with the pose, but in a real world scenario, this thing would probably dangle. And if you look closely at what the developer's done here, it is rigged. This whole thing, this part of the object is rigged. So it has, how many is that here? It has over 20 chains, which is kind of awesome. So let's see if we can pull this guy down by the magic of IK chains. All the other bits and pieces should follow. And that's it pulled down. That's really handy. So you can imagine you could put morphs on this or whatnot, but I think that rigging that like that with 20 segments, that's actually very nice. Much appreciated. Makes your life a lot easier. Again, adds a little bit of believability to the scene. You can also make the swing if you like, so you can just go and move this thing left or right. There might even be morphs in there that will actually move this in a proper manner. Who knows? I'm just going to leave it like this. That's fine for me. Let's see what this looks like once I saved it. Nate, right? Let me go save this guy. Once again as a sub-scene in my characters folder. I'll call him Hero V1. Just him and his clothing. A bear named Sam. Okay, that's a tricky question. So the answer is yes. The second answer is only PAs are allowed to use that tool. So there is a special tool that PAs get, and that's called the HD Morph Loader. And that allows you to sculpt on subdivided levels of the Genesis figure and then recalculate that out and apply this as a HD morph. So whenever you see something that is called character so-and-so HD, then that is what that means. There's actual HD morph detail that is available to that character, and it can be redistributed without distributing the high-res morph. And only the high-res detail of the morph is being redistributed and then dialed up in your figure. This is proprietary technology, and it is not allowed to be used anywhere other than the Daz store or accredited PAs who have signed a special NDA to make these morphs available. And it can only be distributed on the Daz store. You can't make freebies with it. You can't really use it in your own work unless you're a PA and unless you're creating products with it. But yes, there is a tool that makes that possible. As a workaround, you can subdivide your character multiple times. You can say in ZBrush, create a morph and then export that high-res geometry out and then re-rig that character, your new OBJ character, and then import that, use that transfer utility and create yourself a new posable HD character. So that is also possible. Matt from Game Developer Training has a video about that on his channel. It's not perfect, but it is something that non-Daz PAs can use to make HD morphs for their own characters. So yes, it's a tricky thing because it's proprietary technology. There's not a lot of documentation around that, but yeah. No, it won't. It won't merge surfaces. It'll leave the surfaces intact. It'll just come out with a different, higher resolution geometry. The surfaces are not affected. You can just apply the regular textures on the object. You can actually, no, Pamela, you're right. I'm just talking nonsense here. If you have access, if you have legal access to that tool, I would imagine you can use it in your own work, but you cannot distribute the assets that you create with it other than the Daz store. But you can probably make 2D images with it and animations with it. Like if it's output that you showcase in your own work, that's probably going to work, but you cannot sell HD morphs on other marketplaces that are not Daz. You're very welcome. It's one of those things that there's not a lot of information for the general public out there, but PAs have information about that tool, and it's great. I've tried it out myself. It is very, very cool, I gotta say. So this is our. I just want to see what this guy looks like in our scene. So we've dialed this in similar to what we're going to see later here with the 0.3 environment intensity. I might make that a bit brighter again, just so that I can see the detail here. So one thing I'd like to do is make sure the pumpkin is illuminated. And we're going to do that. Then the second thing is that the outfit is actually a dForce outfit. It looks pretty good. I mean, I haven't run dForce on it. It looks pretty good. I might just leave it like it is. Oh, there's a little bit of poke through here. Yeah, okay, let's run dForce. Let's run dForce. I just don't want to get rid of all the little crinkles here. So let's do that first. Since we have saved, let's just go and click the button. And just everything's in default mode with duration 30 frames. That should be okay. It does, doesn't it, Pamela? We're certainly getting there. Might even finish on time, you know. I'm prone to overrun. Do you know, Bear, this would actually be a great encouragement if you're already thinking of becoming a PA. Do so. Any of you who are thinking of becoming a PA with Daz Studio, do that. It's an awesome opportunity for you to showcase your work, to sell your work, to liaise with other PAs, and to really take your work in Daz to another level. If you're unsure about where to look for that, Daz homepage, at the very bottom of it, you can see a link. Usually it says sell your 3D content. If you follow that, there's a link to that application. Thought I'll let you know that in case you didn't know this already. Hey, we're still getting poked through here. What's happening? I'm not happy about this. Jay isn't happy. Why is there poke through? Also, oh, the morph has gone away. Why did that happen? That's interesting. Overcoat actor hood down. Didn't I say that? Oh, I see there's a few keyframes here. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. Oh, there's keyframes here. Right. That kind of destroyed it all for me. Let me see. Let me go and get rid of all the keyframes here. This happens sometimes since dForce relies on keyframes. Ah, there we go. What a shame. We've had all this. I just need to get rid of most of these keyframes and then just push the last one here over to the first one and then run dForce again. That is why that didn't work. Take all of that. Take that, keyframes. Delete all of them. No, don't do that. We've had a good pause here, man. What are you doing? Maybe I'll go and save the pose out and then go and apply it again. Let me do that. Got to think outside the box here, you know. Yeah. Okay, let's save a pose file. I'm sure we can save this. I'm sure we can save this. So that could be in characters. It could be in another folder if you'd like to do that. Call it poses. Just to get organized here. Hero pose, I'll call it. And I would like the current animation frame only. I don't want the whole animation and just on him. There we go. See if this works. Delete everything. We'll see if it works. Luckily we have saved it, so that's neat. There we go. That's worked. And now let's go run dForce again. I'm thinking that might already be good. Under current frame, simulate, see what happens. There, hood stays down. I like it. Just delete keyframes 1 to 4. Yes, exactly, Brutus. That's the spirit. And not to be confused with possesses. Absolutely correct. Do you think X201? Sometimes it feels that way. I think it's just that how 3D does things to you. I mean, Blender does weird things as well. So Daz Studio isn't alone on this. I think it's just 3D that messes with your head. I have a feeling, and you know, this is just pure theory, of course. Look at that, all the poke throughs gone away. That's exactly what I wanted. Well, except for the back, but we're not looking at the back. We're okay with that. I think with this whole us doing 3D building, world building, it just means that two universes occupy the same space, and that's just what brings bugs out, I think. Fact. I think that fundamentally disturbs the time-space continuum thing here. So we've got the dForce done. Let's go and put a light in the guy's head here. I think there was a material for that. Was that? Oh, that wasn't actually from the Plague Doctor. This was from the other figure now, wasn't it? From the Headless Horseman. Under materials, there we go. Headless Horseman, pumpkin default matte, emission on. And there's also subsurface, dual specular subsurface scattering matte. Let's check them all out and see which one works best before we tweak them in our master scene. Which that's the next thing we're going to do. We're going to add two spotlights to our hero character in this scene, so we can then bring him into our other scene. I'm thinking this has a slightly greenish tinge here. Let's try the subsurface scattering. See what that looks like. Oh no, that didn't work. Yeah, emission is definitely the way to go. Yeah, I think so. I feel it looks a little bit greenish, and while that looks all very Halloween-y, I'd like for this to be even brighter, and I'd also like for this to be a little warmer, so I'd like for this to be even more orange. Let's go tweak it under surfaces, default matte, under emission. We've got, yeah, look at that. This is the texture that's in the emission channel, and we can just add a bit of orange light to it. We can decrease the emission temperature. Let's try 3000 without messing with it. That's just given that extra warm touch. You can also give it a color, so you can just go and add something. It doesn't have to be, don't go into here, just a tint, like a small tint like this. Then we don't emit white light, we emit more orange light. Kind of depends what you're after. I think this is a nicer color tone there. I might also crank this up from, what do we have now? We have about 35,000. Let's make it a bit brighter. I don't want to overdo it. Set the pumpkin to something like 50,000. Really bring out that glow there. Maybe even more, 60,000. I think we're good here. Nice. Let's do one other thing, and this is going to be more noticeable when I bring down the environment intensity to kind of 0.3, so to make it really dark again. I like for him to be illuminated from the front with the soft spotlight, and I would also like for him to separate from the background. That's always very important for me, that I have something like a little catch light here on his shoulder. So we'll put a little rim spotlight on the back, and we'll have a soft-ish spotlight from the front. Let's go set those things up and save them with our hero character scene. And then that makes our lives just so much easier by dragging this guy into the master scene, and then we're nearly done. So the catch light's kind of coming from here, I guess. Create new spotlight, there it is. Apply the viewport transforms, so that means the spotlight's going to be positioned where I am right now. And if I zoom out, I can see this is where that is. So that's a good start. It's probably a little high, but we'll tweak it in a minute. I'm going to call it rim light, and I will also, on the parameters tab under general, there is under constraints, there is a thing called point at, and I'm going to point that not just at the base of my character, so not just at this, because that'll mean his feet. I'm going to point it at his chest. So drill down to hip, abdomen lower, upper, chest lower, chest upper. And that'll point at this point now. And the cool thing is that I can now go and make it lower, and the light will follow. And I can move it left and right, and I can just go and see the effect in a moment when I switch this to Iray. But this is kind of how I'm probably going to have my light, from somewhere from here. Something like that. Ish. Exact position to be determined. Under light, let's go and put the photometrics to something a little bit more, with body, as Columbo would say. Let's try 50,000. And the color temperature, I'm going to drop that down to 4,000. Actually 6,500 is going to be all right, because it's a spooky, coolish type night scene. That's our rim light, hopefully. Our front light is going to look more or less exactly the same. Let's go and edit, duplicate that, rename that hero light, and there's a small bug in Daz Studio in which the position of the constraint isn't exactly copied. So if I go and take my hero light away now, you'll see that, take my hero light away now, you'll see that it doesn't actually follow the upper chest anymore. It doesn't follow my character anymore, which is a shame. But under general constraints, it still points at the upper chest. So I have to just reselect it, but I can't just reselect it because it's already selected. Just select something else, like chest lower, then go and select chest upper again, and you're good. And now it works. It's one of those things. I don't really know why that is, but it is so. Let's move this to the front, and it's kind of nice to work with these constraints because it means I can go and just find my position, and I don't have to keep repointing it at the character here. I'll bring that slightly lower. Maybe like this. We'll see how it works. I think in this case I might go and do something about my light geometry. I'll tweak that in a second. Just putting this into Iray view, and we'll see what this looks like. You just got to trick it. That's right, Nate. And the light needs to be warmer because he's the hero. I totally agree, yes. Hey, look at that. This is already really well done. The catch light is a little bit too much on his shoulder here, but the tendency is certainly there. And the hero light from the front, I think we're okay with that. If I disable that, and let's look at that. This is kind of darkish now. And if I switch it on, then I see a lot more of his detail there. I might just change the light geometry a little bit. area, I might turn that from point to disk, and also might just make that a little, shall I make it softer? Probably don't even need that. I think we're okay there. Let me just go and point the rim light at a different position. I'll use 2 viewports for this. So we have the preview at the top here, and at the bottom, oops, that's not quite what I meant. Then let me just go make a temporary camera here, just so that we can switch to that camera over here, and then I can mess with the perspective view without doing anything too drastic over here. So this is the light that I'm going to bring down and further from the back. So like this, and then further over, kind of, whoop, come on buddy, you can do it. Come on, kind of over here, almost opposite the camera. See how this catch light is separating him now? If we had something like the background, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So maybe that was a bit too much, do that. You can also adjust the spread angle there. Yeah, this is exactly what I was thinking. Precisely what I was thinking. Catches the pumpkin there a little bit as well. There. Stickler for details. That's it. That's a hero character in situ. The exact posing and all that, we'll work that out as we are in our master scene, which we're coming to now. There. The camera we don't really need anymore. That was just for preview purposes. I'll go and save this as my final version of the hero character. Scene subset. Hero version 3. All right, there we go. And we need the headlights actually. Before I do that, let me go put the lights and parent them to my guy here so that they're all inside the character. So then I have one node that I can move around, and with him the lights would move. So that'll be beneficial. Let's do that. Scene subset. And this is going to be hero version 3. Anything that's parented underneath this guy will be saved. And then we'll go back to our master scene. Kiwi Hawk, welcome. Good to see you, buddy. Okay, master scenes were up here in master V1. Let me go double click that, and we're not going to save this. And now it's just a matter of bringing our pre-made bits and pieces into the final scene, do a little bit of final lighting to illuminate the background a little bit better, and then we're done. And just to remind everyone what the picture is going to look like, it'll be a little bit something like this. In fact, don't I have it on Photoshop as well? I think I do. Don't need this anymore. There, this is what it looks like. So we're now basically going to assemble the hero character, give him a good position in the front here. Then we're going to go and add a ghost in here. And then I'm not sure if we're going to have time to put the billboards in for the bats. But yeah, let's put a few, like 4 or 5 ghosts in here that are all trying to get him. Our ghost looks much better than this, than the preview. And then also, I'll show you how to add this little fog effect here in Photoshop. It's really not that difficult. Let's do this. I might use my 2 viewports here. The top one is going to be just keeping an eye on my scene in a moment, and I'll just keep moving them around here. The camera is kind of here, and this is just roughly where I'd like my first character to be. Let's see if we can drag him in there. So hero version 3, Alt left click and drag into the viewport, and then I'll pick the position where that is. If I just double click him, he'll go and appear basically in the center of the scene, but we don't really want that. We want him to be closer to the camera, and where the camera is, that might be far away from where the center of the scene is. Why don't I use groups? I don't dislike groups, but right now it's not necessary for me to use them. Groups, they have, for organizational purposes, yes, absolutely. But for now, that wasn't really necessary. Let's go turn our guy around. Look at the lights are turning around with him, which is neat. See what he looks like framed up. So yeah, that is not quite close enough to the camera. Let's bring you up so that you can stand on the wooden path here. Slightly further over there. And then we'll go and click this little white triangle to move you in this center axis over here. Oh yeah, so we can, I don't really mind where the character is. We can make it so that he is on the right hand side. In my original image he was on the left, but I'm happy for him to be on the right. Maybe we'll try that out. I'm also happy to not see his feet. I'm happy for him to be kind of here, and then we'll go and see if we can move him around something like that. We've locked our camera, so it's if we wanted to move that, we need to unlock it first. Doesn't really matter what it looks like in this scene, so if his feet would intersect with the wood, that doesn't really matter. We can go and maybe zoom in there a little bit, I'm thinking. Oh well, everything is locked now. Look at that, very cool. Lock and unlock selected nodes. Does it work? Yes, look at that, it works. Good stuff. So now we can make, whoops, now we can make a small adjustment here. Small, he says, as he totally ruins the scene. Never a good idea. Let's go and see if we can just do the focal length a little bit different. I'm thinking like that, and we just move this guy over. Yeah, let's do that. I think that might work. Let's save it as a new master scene. Also, let me relock the camera, knowing myself that lock selected nodes. There we go. All is locked. Let me go and save this now as whole scene, master v2. There. With version control, it'll just be Control S. One day, huh? Scene optimizer, total lifesaver, yes, absolutely. Thank you, She3PO. She3PO, I love it. That's a good username. Thank you. Yes, let's see a little Iray preview of the scene and see what my lights look like already here in the scene. Let's see. I like to also add a little bit of depth of field in this so that the background of the house is more blurred out. See what this looks like. So the lights have come from the character that we've just built. I've desaturated the scene a little bit to make it more spooky. I've also added that vignette around it, which it appears we could really increase, right? I'm thinking just to make that, to add that little extra spookiness here. Let's bring the vignette back to 10. I'm thinking, because we can always crank this up again. Saturation, again, is debatable. And this is with the regular saturation. Also nice. I think we could even oversaturate it a little bit, like 0.5, 1.5. That makes it all a bit, you know, just lifts that orange, brings that orange out even more. I don't really know. Saturation 0 means this is going to be a black and white render. Also nice to do that. Also, that would work as well, wouldn't it? That, add a lot of fog, increase the contrast a little bit in Photoshop. Imagine. What do you prefer? What do you think? Are you a fan of the more black and white desaturated look, or shall we leave it on the regular saturation? Or even oversaturate a little bit? Crushed blacks, I'm having second thoughts here. This is without crushed blacks, but with a little bit of crushed blacks, it just adds that extra film noir type effect to it, doesn't it? Notice that we're going to bring the detail here and there out with 2 point lights once we've added the ghosts. So let's leave it like this for now. Let me know what you think about the saturation, and then, you know, Black and white 1.25 and overlay them in Photoshop with the focus on the hero. Oh, okay. Yes, that is usually this is how I apply the vignettes in Photoshop. I don't do any vignettes in Daz Studio. I do it all in Photoshop, and then the vignette isn't just generically around the edges of the image, but it'll basically highlight the character that way. That's usually what I do. Carilla says full saturation in the render, and if you want, then desaturate it in post-work. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I tend to do that. I tend to do most of these trickeries in Photoshop. Let's leave it like this then. Bring in the ghosts. Send in the ghosts, so to speak, and see where they should be. So I'm thinking there's going to be room enough for 2 ghosts here and 1 in the background. Maybe 3 ghosts. 3 ghosts coming from the house, from the haunted mansion, coming following him type thing. Let's do that. First ghost is always the hardest, isn't it? Oops. I'm in the shrubbery. There. So ghost under characters, here's ghost V2, that's it. Alt, left click and drag to bring him out. I don't really know how the scale is going to work with the other assets. So that's pretty neat already. If we have ghosts like that and just duplicate this guy a couple of times. Let's see, just before we do that, let's just have a look what this looks like in Iray, just so that I get a better overview of, is the lighting okay? So we've amended the ghost outfit, and the ghost outfit has a little bit of emission applied as well as translucency. So the cutout opacity is taken down, and I hope that's going to blend him into the background much better. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So one thing that's important is that these guys, they all need to look at him. So with his eyes, I think I'm just going to turn him around a little, like so. You could have different decals where the eyes go left and right. That was a little too much. Yeah, so I'll have one other ghost kind of here, and then another one much larger here looking over his shoulder, and then another one maybe from here, something like that. And they can be different sizes, and you can move them around a little bit, so you can angle them so that there's a bit of variation in there. Cool 3D world, huh? Pharaoh woman, welcome. Good to see you. Maybe I'll go and leave him straight and make the other ones a little bit crooked there. Okay, duplicate him. So I think the lighting works well. I might adjust the, well, actually before I duplicate that, I might add a little bit more to the emission on this guy. So with the ghost selected under emission, we've had kind of 15 watts now. Let's make it twice as bright just to see what the difference is. So the more I emit stuff, the more light he will give out, but I don't want him to overpower everything. You know, this is maybe a little bit too much. The emission 0, that would have been not enough, I think. There's no emission in there now. So he now just blends into the background, but I think we need a little bit. I'll try maybe 60. The default was 15 that we started with. That's in watts. I like that. 60, maybe even, I'll make it 75. I think 100 was a bit too much, but maybe 75. A bluish cast, Ascania, we can do that. Super easy. Just change the emission color to something like this, just as a test. And then the ghost is blue. There we go. That is a great idea, actually. We can color them differently. You can have a couple of... No, blue ghosts, that's good. That's a really good tip. Thank you. Loving that. All right. With that blue light, how does 100 look then? It does, doesn't it? Or maybe even then a 200. And then when we do that, maybe we can go and tone his opacity down even more. Now those are spooky ghosts. Absolutely, like in Pac-Man. Oh my god, Brian, that's a great idea. Let's make him different colors like in Pac-Man. Okay, this is a great starting point. Let's go and put more of these guys into the scene. I'll say ghost, edit, duplicate, node hierarchy. So I need to do that so that my eye decals are going to be showing up here. And this guy, he can be kind of here. He can be a little bit larger as well, because he's about to get him or whatever. Have a different angle, make him go over to the side a bit. Yeah, this guy could have a different color. We'll go and duplicate the first ghost again. I'm not using instances because instances they don't work with decals. So a decal is not instance compatible. You can grab them anywhere you like. You can, if it's more convenient for you to do this in the viewport directly, that's also possible. I might just go and turn this guy around like so, give him a different spin as well, and then we'll have at least one more guy over here, maybe even another guy just looking over his shoulder. I'm thinking that might work well. Let's duplicate you here. I like the idea that all of them have different colors, Brian. That's going to be nice. Let's try it in the viewport directly. Sometimes it's difficult to then grab a hold of the correct knick-knack here. So sometimes it's just easier to look in the viewport and just grab the correct adjusting knob in the other viewport. Like this, he might be really close perhaps. Just about to bite him or whatever it is that ghosts do. I don't really know. I've never looked into it. Yeah, like that. And then we have one other guy here, a little guy who's kind of twisted around the camera looking at him. I might just duplicate him as well. Him one more time. And then he goes down here. And he's kind of looking at him funny. Oh, he's not... there we go. He doesn't have to be that large either. I can just make him smaller. It's just the idea. You can also stretch him, of course. You can make him, you know, a little bit like this or whatnot. Oops. As if he's going to bite him. Let's see what this looks like. Let's go save it and see what this is going to look like. So master scenes, master V3. I think I've misspelled master earlier. Good point, yes. Let's see. There. So if we're happy with the placement of our ghosts, I think maybe the whole picture is a little bit right heavy. I'm missing almost some content on the left hand side there. But maybe it contains a caption. I don't know. You can spend hours on placement. I think I do like the bluish hue there. I think this guy, I want to turn him around so that he looks more at him. Same as this guy, I want the eyes to turn at this guy, and this guy as well. We want to turn him around. And that's something you can only really see in Iray, I think. And nudge him forward a bit. So this guy, I think he comes forward a bit. Maybe I'll leave it blue. I might try different colors for a test render later. So let's turn this guy over and around to our character more. And forward, did we say? Yeah, a little bit forward, like her. Come on, buddy. You can do it. And these guys as well, they need to be rotated too. So this guy should look at him and then go slightly further back here. See if that works. It works better than this guy as well. He goes and turns over that way as if he's coming in from the side. Yes, I think I like that. The black ghost, I think he's kind of invisible, you know. Yes, let's try that out. Let's try what the different colors will look like. I think I want another one like him just over here. I think I like another ghost coming at him like this, and he doesn't really spot it. I think I'd like for his head also to turn a little bit, just further to well, his right, our left, his right. Stage right, stage left, whatever it is. Maybe that's a bit too much. There. So there's one guy, kind of his counterpart. He needs to be here, I think. Let's do that. And then we'll experiment with different colors. Duplicate hierarchies. I'm just going to try and get this guy over to the other side. Come on, dude. And turn him around. I think maybe yes, I think that might be nice. So then we can go and put him slightly further over to the right so that they don't intersect with one another. I think maybe on this guy, we just need to see his eyes popping in from the side. See, where are your eyes? These are your eyes, right? I think. I can't see without Iray. Oh, on the... Oh, Kiwi, that might be an idea. Have an English gentleman's top hat on top of the pumpkin. That might be good. Yeah, that. Look, that's neat. That is neat. And this guy then can go a little bit further over here. And just like him as well, he goes over here a tad, and it's a bit more balanced than on the left-hand side there, I'm thinking. Come on, Iray, you can do it. I think I really like his eyes looking at the camera. I think I like that. So I'll save this as a scene, and then we'll go and try and just add different colors to these guys. I think this guy here can go slightly further over here. And then I think that's the end. I could add a little bit of fog in. That's basically just a cloud render layer in Photoshop overlaid, and then just blend it in. That'll be a bit creepy. You can also take the vignette out of here and do that in Photoshop. I might just go and experiment with that a little bit. Let's see, let's go add different colors here. Save and add different colors. Master V4. Very good, Brian. Very good, Brian and Julia. Very good. Yes, dark fog. So I've done it a little bit on here. You can see that there's a fog effect in here. I might show you that quickly. I'll render one out and then we'll do the fog in Photoshop. There's also there's fog in the scene actually. We can just go and switch that on and see how that what that adds to the scene. So it'll be, the preview is going to take a little bit longer now, but let's just see what it looks like. There's fog in the scene. Yeah, there we go. That's the fog, and it actually comes out rather nicely. So no need to put fog in Photoshop unless you want to do this. There's a volumetric fog shader in the scene, and it's nicely done. So maybe it's a little bit much, so you can tone it down, especially since we've seen the previews without the fog. But oh yeah, depth of field. That is maybe one thing I would perhaps add. But I'd rather just take a crack at different colors of these guys. So if this guy is, hello ghost, how you doing? He selected the lights instead. So this ghost, let's make him, what are your suggestions for colors then? If it's not blue, perhaps we'll try pink. Perhaps not that pink. Blue, pink, green, orange. Ha! I wish, Kiwi, I wish. I've got my eye on this A6000, you know. Oh, 48 gigabytes of VRAM. Can't argue with that. Let's try this guy in kind of yellowish or orangey. Green and blue. Yeah, let's try another guy in green maybe. Kind of a mid green. So it's always the emission channel of these ghost objects here. Green, what else? This guy, these guys can be blue. I like that. This guy, we need one more color for this guy. What are we thinking? Blue, green, red, orange. It is, isn't it? K5064. K5000 is not actually that fast. I must admit, I'm disappointed. It's not as fast as I had hoped it was going to be. Purple. Gotcha, buddy. Let's do purple. Cerulean blue. And then, of course, we can use Prussian blue or Prussian white, whatever it was. There, I like it. It's almost like you want to make this guy a different color as well. How about kind of more like a red type color? More like a blood red. Not everyone wants a car, Totte. But other people have to buy their cars and forego those graphic cards with the same price tag. Orange. What's something more orange? Let's try orange. Oh, Prussian blue. There, I think that's nice. Isn't it? That is nice, including the fog from the set, so we didn't have to put it in Photoshop. Just for completion, let's just quickly do this. Let me render this out with and without fog. Let's go switch this fog off. I'll render this out and we'll put fog in Photoshop. How's that? I'm also going to, as I said before, I could go and take the background out. So the background is something that I've done as an environment here. So I would probably use Photoshop to add my own background in there and make it a gradient. Let's do that. Let's oops, sorry. Let's do both of these things and go and say, yeah, as I said, none. None is good. None is what I want. Didn't I say none? Wasn't none? Was there another none option? Dang, brother. Up here. That's the none option I was talking about. There. So filament. Did we save the scene? This is Master V4 with colors. Or color ghosts. And then I'll render this in, I'll make a fairly low res render, like 1280 by 720, and I'll use 200 iterations, and I will use my Iray denoiser. I'm using 2 RTX 2080s for this, and roll with it. Let's see what our memory consumption is. And then after the stream, I might make a larger render and put that in my Daz gallery. And then we can see the before and after. I'll put the other render in my Daz gallery as well, and we can have a comparison. This is what I had prepared, and this is what actually came out. So no bats, but it would be just essentially plain objects which would be billboards, and they would be, you know, put them in as you see fit. So we've got 2.5 gigabytes of texture memory here. That's not bad at all. So before that, I think just the set alone, Orbit Mansion, is about, this is over 4, and that's just the set without my hero character. I didn't do any depth of field. This would be good to just blur out the house and the grounds a little bit more, so that we have more separation between my hero character and the background. So that I would strongly recommend that, even if we're only doing just a little bit. Did I close it? That's bad, isn't it? There's no way to bring this back, is there? Done. I'm just going to render it again. I was going to save it, man. Thank you, Brian. I can never remember my link to the Daz gallery either. It's just such a cryptic, convoluted thing. Distance canvas, that's a good idea. Yes, we can do that. The Link Ninja, absolutely, yes. Sometimes he comes up with the banhammer and goes, you can't do that. Nice ghost. Yeah, so depth of field, that is something I'd definitely recommend. So we have kind of a short focal length, so we'll probably need something like 10, 8, 10, something like that. Or even lower values, so that there's noticeable blurring on the house. We might do that after. I can't, Brian. I'm afraid I can't. Also, the bit before that number, I also can't remember that. So let me put that also in my Halloween folder into renders. That's it. I'll just call it Master V4, and in the Photoshop, there. That's our work in Photoshop. So I think the first thing I would probably do is just add a layer really, and pick a background color underneath that. And make it something that we had before, so something like kind of a darkish blue purple. Oh, come on, something like that. Saturation, all that doesn't matter all that much. I like doing it this way and smuggling in another layer in here, and then just using a gradient in between there, and literally just trying out how this works. So gradient, that's it, kind of like this, and then this here, we'll just drop down the opacity and just blend that in. And the good thing about that is completely non-destructively, you can now play with that layer and just go and see when the background is what you prefer. If it's not quite dark enough, no problem. You can just go and make the main color darker, or pick a completely different color. This is also quite nice. Once you've got it set up like that, you can play with it and see when does it feel right. So maybe it's a bit, that's actually I like that already. So that's how I'd make the background here. And then after that, I would go and try the fog. So fog, that is new layer, and then you have a filter here. Under render, you can go and render some clouds, and that'll look like this. And that's terrible, of course, but the good thing is you can just go and turn the blending mode down to multiply, and then you can see that something is there, but it's just, you know, occluding the image way too much. Drop down the opacity and just blend that in, and that's your fog. So without fog, with fog. So it's barely noticeable, but it is there, and you can have as much or as little of it as you like. And there's all kinds of things. You can have, you know, fluffier clouds, larger, smaller clouds, and all that. But that's how I do it. Then the vignette, I would do new layer, and I would go and grab my oval selection tool. So had I not had a vignette in the render itself, I'd do that. I'd just go and drag out something like an oval. Like we talked about earlier, if I wanted to highlight something in my image where it's essentially about a particular piece, like a character, you could just do something like this. This is good in portraits where you really want to focus in on the character here, and then basically dim all the other stuff out. That adds a little separation there. I'll go and inverse my selection and turn this thing into a smart object. And once I've done it, I can go and fill this. No, sorry, that was the wrong way around. No smart object yet. Let's go and use my fill bucket tool here. Paint bucket tool. Fill everything in this area here. That's now completely pitch black. Now turn this into a smart object. Deselect everything, and since it's now a smart object, you can now go and add a filter to this. And I'm going to go and add my Gaussian blur filter to this with a lot more blur than 15. So let's try 100, maybe something like that. That's probably appropriate. Something really blurry. And once again, it doesn't look great, but as soon as you drop down the opacity, you just blend that in, and then with or without, you just highlight something noticeably on your picture. So notice that the pumpkin guy isn't being touched, but the rest of it is being kind of dimmed out. So it's just a subtle way for the viewer to say this is the important bit of your image. And when you stack those types of effects up, like, you know, add a catch light, blur out the background, and make sure that only the character's in focus, there's no doubt in the viewer's mind what's important in this picture. So then the last thing in the puzzle is then, of course, final color correction. And then we'll go and maybe add that here. Maybe add a bit more contrast, brightness. Depends on how you want your scene to look. There, and that is underneath the vignette. Vignette again. If you want more vignette, make more vignette, or less vignette, something like that. So it's really the only other thing that we didn't quite have time for is add a little light here and there, just point lights to emphasize these pieces. Shall we squeeze in another 20 minutes? Shall we do that? Let's do it. Let's do it. Come on. Let's do it. As Jay completely ruins the scene. I'll put all my ghosts together first of all and say create. I'll just put them into null or group. It doesn't matter. I'll just use a null. Put all my ghosts in here just for organizational purposes. Ghosts and the lights. Indeed, yes, it's not even launched down yet. So the lights, let's do the depth of field first, actually. Depth of field. Depth of field is something I can only judge in, no, I can judge it in filament. Just where that is. So I recommend looking at it kind of from the top with the camera selected on the parameters tab. On the camera tab, switch on depth of field, which is now locked because that's just how we roll here. So unlock selected nodes. That lets me enable it. And as I suspected, no, actually, Can I do it? Can I do it? Focal distance. Yeah, I can't see it change, can I? No. So it needs to be, I can only see this in the texture shaded view. Whoops. Texture shaded view. If this happens ever to you, if you're in this kind of view and all of a sudden you see a black picture and you think, ah, can't see anything, Control L is your friend. So focal distance is not visible. Why not? I don't really know. Oh, because am I looking at the right thing here? Camera. Focal length is correct. Focal distance. I should be seeing something, but I do not. Curious. Oh, because I'm so far away. There we go. I'm so far away from it. There. We're getting there. That is my depth of field here, this little value. So that is somewhere on him. And I've set up a value. Let me try 8. That makes it shallow. Let's see what that looks like in Iray. And we should see that the rest of the house is supposed to be a little bit blurred out. That's the plan anyway. Let's see if I'm correct. Hours later, look at that. So it certainly has depth of field, but obviously a little bit too much. So I didn't want to blur it out quite that much. I want to see some of these ghosts still. So that's too much. That's the f-stop here. 8 is obviously too much. Let's see 16. And we're kind of getting there. 16 is already showing me that the house is blurry, but I think that's still too much. So I'm thinking I might try 22. I don't mind a little bit of blur, but I want to make sure it's not all completely blurry. So, you know, come to think of it, maybe depth of field isn't the best idea here, because that means it would distract from the beautiful ghosts that we've made here. So, you know, you got cake, Pamela. Wonderful. So perhaps I'll try 32. So at least we have a little bit, but not too much. It's almost like I want to make this guy, it's because of the vignette that we've applied here inside Daz Studio. This guy isn't quite as light as he could be. So we could take the vignette out again from Daz Studio, but you know, we're okay. A little bit of blur is good. It just gives that natural camera feeling to it, I'm thinking. What was the other thing I was going to do? I totally forgot now. There was something else, wasn't there? Can I remember? Renderotica, wow. What did I want to do? There was something else I wanted to do, wasn't there? But I completely forgot now. What was it? In here we said, we did this, we did the depth of field. Oh, the lights, yes, of course. Point lights, thank you, Julia. Dang, brother. Totally forgot the point lights. So on the camera, I'm going to go and lock off the camera again. Lock selected nodes there. Everything's locked. I like it. And the point lights. So I'm thinking one could be kind of here and one probably kind of here-ish. Could even be outside the frame of vision. And I'm thinking that because this is going to give a nice reflection over the water that will give the illusion of a full moon kind of outside our frame of vision. And also it'll just illuminate more of the background there. Let's see if we can do it. So one point light, I can't really drag a point light in, which is a bit of a shame. So otherwise I'd just go and alt drag it into here. I might go and just create one with my perspective view, just to have a rough position somewhere here. Create a new point light where my perspective view is. There it is. And I'm thinking it's probably in a good-ish spot. I want it to be somewhere above the water. And also possibly behind our character. So in the viewport here, if it's kind of behind him, in case there's any spurious effects, we wouldn't really see it, which is nice. There. That's behind him, occluding this, and it's still above the water here. That's nice. Light. So this is going to be definitely a point light, and we're going to crank this up to something large, like 200,000. And area is as point light is fine. I'll just see how what this looks like. And if it works on here, we can always move it around. We can shift it to the right, to the left. If that works out here, we'll just make a duplicate and put it on the other side and see what happens. Yes, the bats. Yes, absolutely. The bats. Yes, that's just the dead giveaway for Halloween, isn't it? So it hasn't got the effect that I wanted. It's now brightening up the house more than I want, and it doesn't give me the reflection on the water at all. So let's see if we can move that around a bit. So I think it's a bit bright. Divide by 4. To make it less bright, and go put it closer to the water. And move it also over here more. See if that's a good spot. There it is. This is nice. This is exactly the kind of position that I was looking for. It's not large enough, but the point light being the versatile little chap that it is, let's turn it into a disc. And make the disc a little bit larger. Actually, disc, we can probably turn it into a sphere rather than a disc. Let's make it a sphere. Also, we don't really want to see the emitter, so I'll switch that off in a minute. Render emitter. But I'm hoping, yeah, there we go. There it is. That's exactly that reflection that I was hoping for. But, you know, without my manipulator, I can see that the thing is actually there. So we don't really want to see either of those. So one thing is I'm going to make it larger. I'll try to make it 50 and 50. And that gives a very soft light, but it'll also make the reflection hopefully a little bit larger. Let's see. There it is. So this really does look, if you just look at the reflection, this almost looks like the moon. Could even make it a bit larger now. I think 50-50 is probably going to be okay. Let's make it brighter again. So maybe at least twice as bright. And then we'll just disable the emitter so we don't see the white sphere. We just see the reflection. But you can play with it, you can adjust it, you can put it into position so that it almost doubles up as the moon if you like. So I kind of like the idea of under area, just disable render emitter. And then we can see the reflection, but we don't see the actual sphere. And I think that really works for me. You can also give that a little, you can give that, what's it called? A color. If you find you wanted to make this blue again or something, that is also possible. Under light, if we just make it just a little bluish, like this blue, but kind of, you know, lighter type version of, yeah, that blue. Just make it lighter. That might be too blue now. There, because it's a dark, spooky night. Indirect lighting. Not sure if it's. I think maybe just a pure white was good. Bob Ross's birthday streams are going on all week. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, maybe it's a bit too blue. I'm thinking I might make that a little bit, give it a tint of blue. Prussian blue. And then we'll go and copy this light just over onto the other side. That's not going to be moonlight then, but it'll also just brighten up this part here. Let's see if we can do that. And then I think we're done here. Then we're done. So point light, I'm going to call this one moonlight left, kind of as in camera left. And I'll duplicate that and I'll put it all the way to the right here. It's actually the right, isn't it? What am I talking about? I do frequently get that wrong, left and right. This was supposed to be right, as in my right, not his right. And this one is in fact the left. It's the joys of being dyslexic. Some things come easy to you, other things are seriously difficult, like, you know, left and right. Hey, one of those things. So I'll just go move this kind of over here, maybe behind the ghost. Let's see what it looks like. It's the same height. Same height, all the properties are the same. And it might just give us a little bit more fill in this area over here, just so that probably leave it, probably move it over here. Come on, buddy. You can do it, buddy. There. And exactly, no mistakes. They're only happy little accidents. Happy little ghost, that is correct. Yes, happy little ghost with the happy little trees. And maybe this ghost has a friend over here, and this guy goes, we'll just put a little light, happy little light over the surface of the lake. There we go. Nice. I'm thinking maybe we should take the vignette out and redo this thing in Photoshop. I'm thinking that's on the tone mapping tab. Under vignette, let's set that to 0. There. Happy little 0. Less vignette, but also a lighter picture. Gives us more opportunities in Photoshop. Bob's amazing. I love Bob. Let's render this out then as a 9020 by 1080 version, or just a 1280 version. And then we'll add that just as a drop-in replacement in Photoshop, and just leave all the filters that we have, and just, you know, just go do this thing. Do they? Look at that. Bob Ross, they're currently on both on YouTube and on Twitch. They're doing this streaming marathon. It's a little bit unrelated to Bob Ross, but I don't know, people with beards and wigs streaming video games, but all in honor of Bob Ross. So it's kind of nice that they do that. The Bob Ross of 3D. Cienfuegos. That's a great idea. Like, let me be that guy. Let me be the Bob Ross of Daz for you. Or generally of 3D, yes. Yeah, so the next stream is going to be in about 4 weeks, and either just before or just after Christmas, in the, you know, crim between, as I say, in this period between Christmas and New Year. What do you prefer? Do you want to do it before Christmas, or do you want to do it in the crim between? I don't actually know where Christmas is this year. I'm happy though. I'm happy either way. There, so this is another little trick in Photoshop. If I now have a second render and I want to replace this is kind of cool, isn't it? This is the effect, and we're just putting that on top of it. We can go and place our other image with place embedded. So just go and add that master V5 into the same spot, and we go boom. That's our image now. I like it. With or without that vignette. So I'm thinking maybe I'll do a new vignette. I'm thinking this, I'll put this in a group just so then I can close it down. I'll call this vignette hero, and I'll make another one. So just a new layer here with a circular selection, and I'll just go and make this, put this roughly in the middle here. And I have a little bit more control over this now. And then select inverse, take out that big bad bucket tool, turn this guy into a smart object, deselect everything. With the smart objects layer, head over to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, or just use this, Control Alt F, and just do the same thing that we did before. 100 is probably good. And then we'll drop down the opacity here a little bit until it suits us. Yeah, and then if we're not quite happy with the color correction now, we can just go and tweak that here, make it brighter, make it more contrasty. Do whatever feels creepy. There we go. And it's just wonderful to see this whole process. I always enjoy when I see other artists or 3D artists just get to work with something, basically build something from nothing. I really like that. And yes, I hope I could bring a little bit of that spirit to you, the pre-Halloween spirit. Add clouds to the sky, absolutely, we can do that. It'll be the same kind of cloud layer and just add that over to the sky. Let's go and do that. Can we? Usually what I would do is I'd separate this out here. I'd go and say this here is the background. So put that into its own little group. And then the clouds here, this was actually part of the background, isn't it? This was the fog. But then in the background we can just add another layer in here, I think. And just add the clouds once again. So under filter, render clouds, we can put that in here. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. And then we just dim down the opacity in here. And those clouds are now only in the background, as much or as little as you like. So this is normal. Let's try it with the what's it called here? The hello brain, multiply. There we go. And add as much or as little cloud cover as you need. You can also use darken or lighten, whatever works best really. Or just use the regular normal blend mode. That'll also work. It's all those little tricks. I think Photoshop is just an awesome little playground. Do you know, absolutely, Jay doesn't even know what he creates for Christmas yet. So if you have any suggestions, then please leave it here in the comments on this video. I'll check it regularly. My friends, I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you so much for being here. This was a pleasure and a privilege to do this with you. This is really fun. I'm enjoying these streams. And as I said, I'm going to go and make a higher res render and just pop that into the same Photoshop file and put it on my Daz gallery. If you have any suggestions for next time for what we want to do for Christmas, particular bundle you want to check out, particular technique you want to check out, anything you have questions about, drop them here in the comments and I'll take that as a cue and see what we want to do next weekend. Or not next weekend, but during the crim between, or just before or just after Christmas. Have a wonderful night or a wonderful evening, especially you, Dalton Beck. I hope you had a wonderful gig and I will see you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye. Titles are here.